The unexpected meeting. On a sunny afternoon, the local park was filled with laughter and joy. Children played on swings, couples strolled hand in hand, and families set up picnics on the grass. It was the kind of day that made people forget their worries, a day to enjoy life. Among those enjoying the weather was General Williams, a Black Army general who was spending precious time with his family. General Williams had recently returned from a long deployment, and he cherished every moment with his wife, Sarah, and their two children, Emily and James. They had decided to spend the day at the park, a favorite spot where they could bond over games and delicious food. As they spread out their picnic blanket, Sarah began to unpack sandwiches and fruits, while Emily and James raced each other to the playground. "Last one to the swings is a rotten egg," shouted James, laughing as he sprinted ahead. Emily giggled and chased after him. General Williams watched with a smile, his heart swelling with pride and happiness. It was moments like these that made all the sacrifices worth it. While the family enjoyed their picnic, the atmosphere was peaceful. Nearby, a group of friends played frisbee, and an elderly couple sat on a bench feeding the ducks. However, as the sun shone brightly, not everyone felt the warmth of the day. Officer Smith, a local police officer, was patrolling the park, and his demeanor was anything but cheerful. He wore a stern expression and had a reputation for being overly strict. As Officer Smith walked the paths, he glanced around, keeping an eye on everyone. He noticed General Williams and his family laughing and having fun. But instead of feeling joy at seeing a family together, Officer Smith felt a strange sense of suspicion. He had seen too many families enjoying themselves in the park, and he was determined to make sure everything stayed in line. With a frown on his face, Officer Smith approached General Williams and his family. "Excuse me," he said loudly, his tone sharp. "What are you doing here?" General Williams looked up, surprised. "Just having a family picnic. We're not causing any trouble, officer." But Officer Smith wasn't interested in listening. "You need to move along. This park is for everyone, and I don't want any issues," he said, crossing his arms. General Williams felt a mix of confusion and frustration. He had always respected the police and believed in their duty to protect the community. However, being confronted in this manner felt unfair and unjust. "Sir, we are simply enjoying a day out with our children. There is no need to be rude," he replied calmly. Officer Smith's eyes narrowed. "I'll decide what's necessary. You need to pack up and leave," he insisted, his voice rising. People nearby turned their heads, drawn by the sudden confrontation. A few whispered among themselves, unsure of what to think. "Dad, what's happening?" Emily asked, looking worried. James stood close to his father, sensing the tension in the air. "Everything is fine, kids," General Williams reassured them, though he felt the pressure of the situation growing. He did not want to make a scene, but he also knew he had to stand his ground. "I just want to enjoy this day with my family. We are not doing anything wrong." But Officer Smith was not backing down. He raised his voice even more, drawing the attention of onlookers. "If you don't leave, I'll have to call for backup," he threatened, his face red with anger. The crowd began to gather, sensing the conflict escalating. The atmosphere was thick with tension, and General Williams could feel his heart racing. He knew he had to handle this carefully, not just for his sake, but for his children watching. "You don't need to call anyone. I am a veteran and a general in the Army. I have served this country, and I deserve to enjoy this day with my family," he said, trying to maintain his composure. Officer Smith scoffed, clearly not impressed. "Your rank doesn't matter here. You're just another person in the park to me," he said dismissively. The crowd gasped at his words. Many were shocked by the officer's behavior. They could see that General Williams was calm and respectful, while Officer Smith was aggressive and rude. Just then, a bystander pulled out their phone, recording the scene. The sound of a camera clicking caught everyone's attention. "Someone should post this online," they whispered to their friend, anger, and disbelief evident in their tone. The thought of recording the encounter added a layer of pressure to the situation. The crowd felt a mix of sympathy for General Williams and outrage at Officer Smith's behavior. The tension hung in the air, heavy and uncomfortable. Children who had been playing nearby had stopped to watch, sensing that something serious was happening. Parents shielded their kids from the unfolding drama, unsure of what would happen next. Officer Smith's face remained firm, but behind his tough exterior, uncertainty began to creep in. He had not expected to confront someone like General Williams, who stood with quiet strength and dignity. The general's calmness seemed to challenge the officer's aggressive stance. As the situation reached a boiling point, General Williams took a deep breath, hoping to diffuse the tension. "Listen, officer, I'm not here to fight. I want to set a good example for my kids. I only ask for a little respect," he said, his voice steady. But Officer Smith was still not willing to back down. His mind raced as he tried to regain control of the situation. The crowd continued to watch, their expressions a mix of disbelief and anger. The day started as a joyful family outing, but now it had turned into an unexpected confrontation. How this would end was uncertain, but the stakes were high. Would Officer Smith recognize his mistake before it was too late? Would General Williams be able to protect his family from the unwarranted hostility? The tension in the park had reached its peak, and the next moments would change everything. The tension mounts. The standoff between General Williams and Officer Smith hung in the air like an electric current. The crowd around them had grown, curiosity pulling in onlookers who whispered among themselves. Some were outraged, while others felt a mix of fear and confusion. General Williams stood tall, determined not to let the officer's aggression affect him. He looked around at his children, who were watching with wide eyes. "Daddy, is everything okay?" Emily asked, her small voice tinged with worry. "Everything will be fine, sweetheart," General Williams reassured her, though he could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He knew that this moment was about more than just him. It was about showing his children how to stand up for what is right. Officer Smith, however, was feeling increasingly defensive. "You think your uniform makes you special," he barked, stepping closer to General Williams, invading his personal space. "You're not above the law. I can take you in if I want." The threat hung heavily in the air. General Williams felt anger rise within him, but knew he had to keep his cool. He glanced at Sarah, who was visibly shaken, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. The children looked from their father to the officer, sensing the tension but not fully understanding why it was happening. "Why are you treating us this way?" General Williams asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "We're just a family enjoying a day out. You have no reason to threaten us." Officer Smith's expression shifted slightly as he scanned the faces in the crowd. He noticed that people were filming him, their phones aimed directly at him. Suddenly, he felt exposed and uncertain. The crowd was starting to murmur, and he could see some were beginning to side with General Williams. "Get back to your picnic," Officer Smith shouted at the bystanders, attempting to regain control. "This doesn't concern you." But the crowd was not easily intimidated. A woman stepped forward, her phone still recording. "It does concern us when an officer acts like this," she said firmly. "He's not doing anything wrong. You're the one causing the trouble." General Williams felt a wave of support wash over him, but he still worried about escalating the situation further. He took a deep breath, trying to remain calm for the sake of his family. "Listen, officer," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I respect your role in the community, but I won't stand here and let you disrespect my family." Officer Smith's jaw tightened. "Respect is earned, not given," he replied, his eyes narrowing. "And right now, you're making it hard for me to do my job." The crowd began to murmur again, sensing that this was a pivotal moment. General Williams could feel the tension rising like steam from a boiling pot. It was clear that the situation could go in any direction. Suddenly, a young man in the crowd shouted, "He's a general. You should be showing him respect." not trying to bully him. General Williams felt a surge of support from the crowd, but Officer Smith remained unfazed. "It doesn't matter who he is. I'm not intimidated," he snapped, but his voice trembled slightly. The fear of being called out was beginning to shake his confidence. "Intimidation isn't the point here," General Williams said, raising his voice just enough to be heard over the crowd. "You have a responsibility to protect and serve, not to threaten and bully. We are all here as part of this community. We deserve to feel safe." As he spoke, the crowd shifted, murmurs of agreement echoing through the park. General Williams could see some people nodding, while others pulled out their phones to document the unfolding drama. The support from the crowd began to empower him, and he felt the need to stand firm for his children, who were watching their father with wide eyes. Officer Smith, now on the defensive, began to realize that the tide was turning against him. He took a step back, glancing around at the faces watching him closely. The crowd was no longer passive. They were ready to take action if he continued to escalate the situation. "Back off," he shouted again, his voice cracking. "You don't know what you're talking about." General Williams stood his ground. "We all know what's happening here," he replied. "You're misjudging the situation and treating us unfairly because of our skin color. That's not what a good officer does." The tension was palpable, and the atmosphere around them shifted from uncertain hostility to a sense of unity among the onlookers. General Williams' calm demeanor resonated with the crowd, giving them the courage to stand behind him. The children watched, still confused, but feeling the strength of their father's words. Then, an older man stepped forward from the crowd, looking directly at Officer Smith. "You need to think about your actions," he said. "This is not just about you being an officer. This is about humanity, and the way you treat others reflects on us all." The crowd murmured in agreement, and Officer Smith could feel the pressure mounting. He was not just confronting General Williams. He was facing an entire community standing up for what was right. "Let's just all calm down," Officer Smith said, trying to regain some authority in his voice. "I'm just doing my job." But General Williams was not willing to let that excuse pass. "Your job is to protect us, not intimidate us," he replied. "If you can't do that, then maybe you need to rethink your approach." With that, General Williams took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment pressing on him. The crowd was watching, the tension thick in the air, and he knew that this encounter could change everything. Would Officer Smith finally see the truth in his words? Or would this confrontation escalate into something much worse? The future of this moment hung in the balance, and both men felt the gravity of what was at stake. The turning point. As the tension between General Williams and Officer Smith continued to rise, the crowd buzzed with anticipation. People had gathered not just to watch a confrontation, but to witness a pivotal moment in their community. The atmosphere felt charged, electric, as if the very air was alive with the possibility of change. General Williams stood firm, maintaining eye contact with Officer Smith. He sensed that this was not just about him anymore. It was about standing up against injustice. He could feel the eyes of his children on him, filled with a mix of concern and admiration. "This isn't just a matter of authority," he said, his voice steady but passionate. "It's about mutual respect. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of their background." Officer Smith shifted uncomfortably, the crowd's scrutiny bearing down on him. He had come to the park expecting an ordinary day, perhaps to enforce a minor rule or two. But this was spiraling into something much larger, and he felt the weight of that responsibility. "I was just following protocol," he muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. "Protocol doesn't mean you can act unjustly," General Williams responded, his tone firm. "If you believe that, then you're misusing your authority. You are a representative of the law, but today you are representing fear and aggression." The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. It was clear that many people felt the same way. They were fed up with the ongoing issues of racial profiling and disrespect. General Williams' words resonated deeply, sparking a flicker of courage in those who had felt powerless for too long. Officer Smith's face flushed with frustration. "You don't know what it's like to keep the peace," he snapped. "People like you don't see the dangers we face every day." The comment hit General Williams hard. He had served his country with honor, faced battles far beyond this park, and had risked his life for the safety of others. "I understand danger, officer," he said, his voice rising slightly. "But that doesn't give you the right to disrespect me or my family." The crowd began to murmur in agreement again. General Williams was not just speaking for himself. He was voicing the frustrations of many. Some people stepped forward, wanting to support him, but unsure how to intervene. Then a voice rang out from the back of the crowd. "We all deserve respect," a young woman shouted. Her words echoed like a rallying cry, igniting a sense of unity among the onlookers. This isn't just about one family. It's about everyone who has faced discrimination. General Williams turned slightly, recognizing the sentiment in the crowd. "Exactly," he affirmed. "We are all part of this community. We should uplift each other, not tear each other down. Respect is a two-way street." The mood shifted further as more people voiced their support. "Stand with him," another voice called. "We've had enough of this." Feeling the pressure mounting, Officer Smith took a step back, clearly flustered. He glanced around, realizing that he was becoming the focus of resentment rather than the authority he wished to project. "I'm just doing my job," he shouted again, but the desperation in his tone was evident. General Williams noticed the cracks forming in the officer's bravado. "And you can do your job without attacking innocent people," he replied. "Being a police officer means protecting the community, not using your badge as a weapon against it." The crowd's cheers grew louder, and Officer Smith found himself increasingly isolated. It was becoming clear that the community was united behind General Williams, and that realization was sinking in. The officer's expression shifted from anger to confusion, and finally to a dawning sense of regret. Maybe I overreacted," he stammered, looking around as if searching for validation. "I just wanted to ensure everything was okay." General Williams seized the opportunity. "And we're all okay," he said, keeping his tone calm. "But your approach can have lasting effects. You have the chance to make a choice right now, to listen, learn, and change how you see people." For a moment, the crowd was silent, the tension palpable as everyone waited for Officer Smith's response. He looked at General Williams, then at the faces of the people around him. He had a choice to make, and it was clear that the community was ready to support him if he chose the right path. "Maybe I need to reflect on how I handle situations," Officer Smith finally admitted, his voice quieter now. "I didn't mean to cause harm." General Williams nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. "It's never too late to change," he encouraged. "We can all learn from this moment. It starts with listening to each other and building bridges instead of walls." The crowd erupted into applause, a wave of appreciation for both General Williams' courage and Officer Smith's willingness to reflect. The officer's admission of fault had turned the confrontation into an opportunity for growth, not just for him, but for everyone watching. As the crowd dispersed slowly, General Williams felt a sense of hope. He had stood up for his family, and in doing so, had become a voice for others who felt powerless. His children watched, wide-eyed, but now filled with pride instead of fear. They had witnessed a moment of real change, one that could ripple through their community. Officer Smith took a deep breath, visibly shaken but also relieved. He approached General Williams, extending his hand. "I'm sorry for how I treated you," he said, genuine remorse in his voice. "I'll do better." General Williams shook his hand firmly. "Thank you," he replied. "That's all we can ask for. Let's work together to make our community a better place." With that, a new chapter began, one filled with understanding, respect, and hope. As they parted ways, both men realized that today had changed them in ways they would never forget. The aftermath. In the days that followed the confrontation at the park, The community buzzed with discussions about what had transpired. News spread quickly, and people began to share their own stories of racial encounters, both positive and negative. General Williams had become a symbol of hope and strength, inspiring many to stand up for themselves and others. General Williams received a call from the mayor's office. "We heard about your interaction with Officer Smith," the mayor said, sounding impressed. "It seems like you opened a lot of eyes that day. We want to invite you to speak at the upcoming town hall meeting." The general felt a swell of pride and responsibility. He knew that this was an opportunity to advocate for change and promote understanding between the police and the community. "I would be honored to speak," he replied, determination in his voice. As the day of the meeting approached, General Williams prepared his speech. He wanted to address the issues of bias and discrimination head-on, but he also wanted to emphasize the importance of unity and healing. His family stood by him, offering support and encouragement. "Just remember, Dad, you're doing this for everyone," his daughter said, her eyes shining with pride. "You're not just our hero, you're theirs too." On the evening of the town hall meeting, the auditorium buzzed with anticipation. Residents filled the seats, eager to hear from General Williams and other community leaders. The atmosphere was tense, a mix of hope and skepticism. Many people were unsure if change was truly possible. As General Williams stepped onto the stage, he felt a surge of adrenaline. He glanced at the audience, noting the diversity of faces staring back at him. Young, old, black, white, Hispanic, and everything in between. He took a deep breath, ready to share his message. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady. "I stand here not just as a general, but as a father, a husband, and a member of this community. What happened in the park was not just about me, it was about all of us. It was about understanding and respect." The audience listened intently, some nodding in agreement. We live in a world where many feel marginalized and attacked. It's time we acknowledge that and strive to change our community for the better. He spoke passionately about his experience, recounting the confrontation with Officer Smith. That moment was a turning point, not just for me, but for our entire community. We must understand that the badge carries weight, but it also carries responsibility. We need officers who see us as neighbors, not threats. As he spoke, General Williams noticed Officer Smith seated in the front row, his face tense with both regret and determination. The general knew that this was a moment for healing. "Officer Smith reached out to me after our encounter," he continued. "He admitted he had made mistakes, and that takes courage. We must encourage our law enforcement to reflect on their actions and learn from them. We all make mistakes. It's how we respond to those mistakes that define us." A ripple of applause erupted in the room. General Williams felt a sense of unity beginning to form. "But it's not just about police reform," he added. "It's about each of us taking the stand against racism, intolerance, and ignorance in our daily lives. We must educate ourselves and our children about the value of diversity." The crowd erupted in cheers, and he could see faces brightening with hope. General Williams continued, sharing personal stories about his family and the struggles they had faced. He encouraged everyone to be open to dialogue and to reach out to one another. At the end of his speech, he concluded with a call to action. "Let's work together to create a community where respect and understanding are the foundations of our interactions. Together, we can build bridges instead of walls." As he stepped down from the podium, the applause grew louder. General Williams smiled, feeling a wave of warmth and gratitude. People began to approach him, sharing their own stories and expressing their appreciation for his bravery. Officer Smith waited until the crowd had thinned out before approaching the general. "I just wanted to say thank you for what you said tonight," he said, sincerity in his voice. "I know I have a long way to go, but I want to do better for our community." General Williams extended his hand. "We all have a long way to go, officer. It's about taking those steps together. I appreciate your willingness to learn." As they shook hands, a sense of camaraderie formed between them. They were no longer adversaries but partners in the fight for change. The town hall meeting sparked conversations in homes, schools, and local businesses. People began to share their experiences, and discussions about race became more common. Some residents even organized workshops to educate others on diversity and inclusion. General Williams and Officer Smith began working together to create a community outreach program aimed at fostering better relationships between law enforcement and residents. They held events where police officers and community members could engage in open conversations, share meals, and even play sports together. These initiatives garnered support from local organizations and quickly gained traction. Slowly but surely, the community began to change. People were coming together, united by a shared goal of understanding and respect. As General Williams watched these developments unfold, he felt a sense of pride. His determination to stand up for his family had ignited a spark of change that was spreading throughout the community. Together, they were forging a brighter future, one where every voice mattered and every person was valued. The road ahead would not be easy, but the progress they made was a testament to the power of unity. As General Williams reflected on how far they had come, he knew that this was just the beginning. Together, they would continue to fight for a world where everyone could live in peace and harmony. A new beginning. As the weeks turned into months, the community continued to thrive with the changes initiated by General Williams and Officer Smith. Their outreach program, aimed at building trust between the police and residents, became a model for other neighborhoods. They organized monthly events that included barbecues, sports tournaments, and community cleanups, bringing together people of all backgrounds. One sunny Saturday, the duo planned a special event called Unity Day. They wanted to celebrate the progress made and acknowledge the work still needed to create a more inclusive community. Flyers were posted throughout the neighborhood, and excitement buzzed in the air. Families planned to come out, and local businesses offered their support. On the day of Unity Day, the park was filled with laughter and chatter. Colorful banners hung from the trees, and tables were set up with food, games, and activities for kids. General Williams and Officer Smith greeted everyone with smiles, their camaraderie evident to all. As people began to arrive, General Williams stood on a small stage set up for speeches. He looked out at the crowd, seeing familiar faces and new ones. This was a moment to reflect on how far they had come, but also a time to emphasize the journey ahead. "Thank you all for being here today," he began, his voice clear and strong. "Today, we celebrate not just our differences, but the strength we find in our unity. We are all part of this community, and together we can create a better future." Applause erupted from the crowd. General Williams felt a sense of pride swell in his chest. The atmosphere was filled with hope and determination. Officer Smith followed, addressing the crowd with a sincerity that touched many. "I have learned so much over the past few months. I've learned that listening is just as important as speaking. I've learned that respect can open doors, and understanding can break down barriers. Let's continue to build on this foundation together." As the day progressed, families participated in various activities. There were games for children, art stations where they could express themselves, and even a local talent show showcasing the diverse skills of community members. Laughter echoed throughout the park, a beautiful sound that illustrated the bond being formed. In one corner, a group of kids played soccer, and their parents cheered from the sidelines. General Williams noticed his daughter, Maya, teaching a group of younger kids how to kick the ball. She beamed with pride as they scored goals, her laughter contagious. In another area, Officer Smith helped a group of teenagers with a mural they were painting. The mural depicted scenes of unity, love, and understanding, and it became a focal point for the event. Many community members stopped to watch the mural take shape, feeling inspired by the message it conveyed. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the park, General Williams gathered everyone around for a closing ceremony. He wanted to take this moment to reinforce the importance of their journey. "I hope today has shown us all that we are stronger together," he said. "Let's carry this spirit of unity with us beyond today. Let's remember that it's our differences that make us unique and our shared humanity that connects us. The crowd erupted into applause once more, and a sense of warmth filled the air. General Williams could see the pride on the faces of his fellow community members. They were beginning to believe that change was possible, and that they were a part of it. After the event, as people began to leave, many expressed their gratitude to General Williams and Officer Smith. "Thank you for doing this," one mother said, her eyes shining with appreciation. "It means a lot to see our community come together like this." Officer Smith smiled, nodding in agreement. "It's just the beginning," he replied. "We're committed to making this a regular occurrence. We want everyone to feel valued and included." As the sun dipped below the horizon, General Williams and Officer Smith shared a moment of reflection. They looked around the park, now filled with the remnants of the day's activities. Balloons, food wrappers, and the laughter of children still echoing in the background. "I never imagined we could make such a difference in such a short time," General Williams said, a smile on his face. "This is what community should feel like." Officer Smith nodded, feeling a sense of fulfillment. It's amazing how a few conversations and events can spark such a change. We've shown that it's possible to bridge gaps and build trust. As they began to clean up, they noticed a group of teenagers lingering by the mural. They were discussing what to add next, their faces animated with excitement. General Williams felt a surge of hope seeing the younger generation taking an active interest in their community. "This mural is going to be a lasting symbol of our commitment to each other," he said, smiling at Officer Smith. "It represents everything we've worked for." "Absolutely," Officer Smith replied. "And it's a reminder that we must keep the dialogue going. The work isn't done yet." That night, General Williams returned home, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. He reflected on the journey that had brought him here, the confrontation with Officer Smith, the meetings, and the outreach programs. It had all led to this moment, and he knew there was still more to do. As he tucked his daughter into bed, she looked up at him, her eyes sparkling with admiration. "You were amazing today, Dad. Everyone loved you." "Thank you, sweetheart," he replied, ruffling her hair. "But it's not just about me. It's about all of us working together. Remember, we're all part of something bigger." Maya nodded, a serious expression on her face. "I want to help too, Dad. I want to make our community even better." His heart swelled with pride. "And you will, my love. We all will. Together, we can create a future where everyone feels safe and respected." As he turned off the light and closed the door, General Williams felt a sense of peace wash over him. The fight for justice and equality was far from over, but he knew they were on the right path. The unity they had built would only grow stronger, and together they would continue to change the world, one step at a time. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the park, General Williams gathered everyone around for a closing ceremony. He wanted to take this moment to reinforce the importance of their journey. "I hope today has shown us all that we are stronger together," he said. "Let's carry this spirit of unity with us beyond today. Let's remember that it's our differences that make us unique and our shared humanity that connects us." The crowd erupted into applause once more, and a sense of warmth filled the air. General Williams could see the pride on the faces of his fellow community members. They were beginning to believe that change was possible, and that they were a part of it. After the event, as people began to leave, many expressed their gratitude to General Williams and Officer Smith. "Thank you for doing this," one mother said, her eyes shining with appreciation. "It means a lot to see our community come together like this." Officer Smith smiled, nodding in agreement. "It's just the beginning," he replied. "We're committed to making this a regular occurrence. We want everyone to feel valued and included." As the sun dipped below the horizon, General Williams and Officer Smith shared a moment of reflection. They looked around the park, now filled with the remnants of the day's activities. Balloons, food wrappers, and the laughter of children still echoing in the background. I never imagined we could make such a difference in such a short time, General Williams said, a smile on his face. This is what community should feel like. Officer Smith nodded, feeling a sense of fulfillment. It's amazing how a few conversations and events can spark such a change. We've shown that it's possible to bridge gaps and build trust. As they began to clean up, they noticed a group of teenagers lingering by the mural. They were discussing what to add next, their faces animated with excitement. General Williams felt a surge of hope seeing the younger generation taking an active interest in their community. This mural is going to be a lasting symbol of our commitment to each other, he said, smiling at Officer Smith. It represents everything we've worked for. Absolutely, Officer Smith replied. And it's a reminder that we must keep the dialogue going. The work isn't done yet. That night, General Williams returned home, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. He reflected on the journey that had brought him here, the confrontation with Officer Smith, the meetings, and the outreach programs. It had all led to this moment, and he knew there was still more to do. As he tucked his daughter into bed, she looked up at him, her eyes sparkling with admiration. You were amazing today, Dad. Everyone loved you. Thank you, sweetheart, he replied, ruffling her hair. But it's not just about me. It's about all of us working together. Remember, we're all part of something bigger. Maya nodded, a serious expression on her face. I want to help too, Dad. I want to make our community even better. His heart swelled with pride. And you will, my love. We all will. Together, we can create a future where everyone feels safe and respected. As he turned off the light and closed the door, General Williams felt a sense of peace wash over him. The fight for justice and equality was far from over, but he knew they were on the right path. The unity they had built would only grow stronger, and together they would continue to change the world, one step at a time. Confronting the past. As the days turned into weeks, the changes in the community began to take root. General Williams and Officer Smith continued to work together, hosting events that encouraged dialogue and understanding. However, the past was not so easily forgotten. Both men had personal battles to face, and it was time for them to confront their histories. One afternoon, as General Williams was organizing another community meeting, he received an unexpected phone call. It was from an old friend, Marcus, who he hadn't spoken to in years. Marcus had been a mentor to him during his early days in the Army, and they had shared many experiences that shaped Williams into the leader he had become. General, I heard about the work you're doing in the community, Marcus said, his voice full of warmth. I'm proud of you, man. I'd love to catch up. Maybe share some of my thoughts on community relations. General Williams felt a wave of nostalgia wash over him. I'd love that, Marcus. It's been too long. Let's meet at my office tomorrow. The next day, as Marcus entered the office, General Williams was struck by how time had changed them both. They embraced warmly, and the years of separation melted away. They sat down over coffee, and their conversation quickly turned to the community's struggles. Things have changed a lot since we were in the field, Marcus began. But some things remain the same. The relationship between communities and law enforcement is still fragile, especially for people of color. General Williams nodded, reflecting on his own experiences. You're right. It's something I felt deeply, especially after my encounter with Officer Smith. It pushed me to take action, to bridge the gaps. But I still struggle with the weight of my past. Marcus looked at him thoughtfully. We all have our battles. The key is to confront them, to acknowledge them. That's how real healing begins. This conversation sparked a memory in General Williams. He recalled a moment from his military service that had left a lasting impact on him. There was an incident during deployment that still haunts me. I was involved in a mission where a misunderstanding led to civilian casualties. It was devastating. Marcus leaned forward, listening intently. That's a heavy burden to carry. Have you spoken about it? No, I've kept it to myself, General Williams admitted, feeling vulnerable. I thought it was better to bury it and focus on moving forward, but maybe that's not the right approach." Marcus smiled gently. "You've been given a chance to lead now, to guide others. Sharing your story can help others understand the complexities of our experiences. You might inspire someone else to heal too." General Williams contemplated Marcus's words. He realized that by sharing his own story, he could foster deeper connections within the community and create an environment of understanding. It was time to confront the past openly, not just for himself, but for those who might benefit from his honesty. As they wrapped up their meeting, General Williams felt a renewed sense of purpose. He shared his plan to address the community about his past experiences at the next gathering, and Marcus offered to support him. "You're not alone in this, General. I'll be right there with you, healing together." The day of the community meeting arrived, and excitement buzzed in the air. General Williams stood at the front of the packed room, surrounded by residents and fellow officers, including Officer Smith. He felt a mix of anxiety and determination. This was a pivotal moment, not just for him but for the community. As he took the microphone, he scanned the faces before him. Some were curious, others anxious, but all were eager to listen. "Thank you all for coming today," he began, his voice steady but warm. "I wanted to take this opportunity to share something personal. Many of you know me as your general, but I also carry stories from my past that shape who I am today." The room fell silent, and he could feel the weight of their attention. "During my time in the Army, I faced situations that still haunt me. One incident, in particular, taught me a lesson I'll never forget. We were on a mission, and a misunderstanding led to the loss of innocent lives. I carry that burden with me, and it drives my passion for ensuring that our community feels safe and respected." Gasps of surprise rippled through the crowd. General Williams continued, his heart pounding. "I've realized that healing starts with honesty and vulnerability. I want to create a space where we can talk openly about our fears, our regrets, and our hopes for the future." Officer Smith stood beside him, nodding in agreement. "I, too, have had to confront my own biases and learn from my mistakes. It's a journey, and it's essential that we take it together." As the two men shared their stories, the atmosphere shifted. Residents began to engage, sharing their own experiences of pain and misunderstanding. Voices echoed in the room, creating a symphony of stories, all interconnected by a common thread: the desire for healing and understanding. One woman stood up, her voice trembling but resolute. "I want to thank you both for being brave enough to share. I've experienced racial profiling, and it's painful to carry. But hearing you talk makes me feel seen and heard. It gives me hope that things can change." More voices joined in, sharing similar sentiments. General Williams and Officer Smith listened intently, feeling the weight of the moment. They had opened a door, and the community was stepping through it together. As the meeting concluded, General Williams felt a sense of catharsis wash over him. It was just the beginning of a long journey, but they had taken a crucial step towards healing. He looked at Officer Smith, who smiled back at him, their partnership solidified through shared vulnerability. As people filed out of the room, many stopped to express their gratitude. General Williams felt a renewed sense of hope. They were not just building a community, they were fostering a family that could weather any storm together. In the weeks that followed, the community meetings became a regular occurrence. They established a community conversation series where residents could share their stories and experiences in a safe environment. General Williams and Officer Smith continued to lead, facilitating discussions that encouraged openness and connection. Through these gatherings, relationships flourished. Neighbors who had once avoided each other began to bond, sharing meals, stories, and laughter. The park that once echoed with silence now resonated with joy and camaraderie. One day, as General Williams watched children playing in the park, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. The community was healing, and he was proud to be part of it. Officer Smith joined him, and together they reflected on the journey they had embarked on. "It's amazing to see the change," Officer Smith remarked, a smile on his face. "We've created something special here." General Williams nodded, his heart swelling with pride. "And it's only the beginning. We must continue to listen, learn, and grow together. Our past will always be part of us, but it doesn't have to define our future." As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the park, General Williams and Officer Smith stood side by side, knowing they had laid the groundwork for a brighter tomorrow. Together, they would continue to build bridges and create a community where everyone felt valued and respected. Their journey had been difficult, but it was one worth taking. With every step forward, they proved that change was possible, and that hope could flourish in even the most challenging circumstances. A new dawn. The sun shone brightly on the day of the community's grand festival, a celebration that marked the culmination of their efforts to heal and unite. General Williams and Officer Smith stood together at the entrance of the park, their hearts filled with pride and anticipation. This festival was not just an event. It was a symbol of hope, a testament to their journey toward understanding and acceptance. As families arrived, the atmosphere buzzed with excitement. Colorful banners fluttered in the breeze, and the smell of delicious food filled the air. Kids laughed and played, their innocence shining through as they ran from one booth to another. The festival was designed to bring the community together, showcasing local talents, food, and stories of resilience. General Williams took a deep breath, savoring the moment. He glanced at Officer Smith, who was busy setting up a booth with local police officers. Together, they had created a space where community members could meet the officers in a friendly environment, allowing them to connect on a personal level. As the festival kicked off, General Williams welcomed everyone with a heartfelt speech. "Today, we celebrate our community and the strength we find in each other," he began, his voice steady and clear. "This festival is a reminder that despite our differences, we can come together and create something beautiful. Let's continue to share our stories, listen to one another, and build a future filled with hope and respect." The crowd erupted in applause, their cheers echoing through the park. General Williams felt a swell of emotion as he looked out at the sea of smiling faces. It was a moment he had longed for, a moment of unity and joy. As the day unfolded, laughter and music filled the air. People danced, ate, and enjoyed various activities, from face painting to games. Families gathered around tables, sharing meals and conversations. General Williams moved among them, engaging with everyone he could. He smiled as he saw children play with police officers, tossing a frisbee and laughing together. The barriers that once divided them were slowly dissolving, replaced by friendship and understanding. Officer Smith, too, felt the weight of the day's significance. He watched as people approached him, curious and eager to talk. Many had once feared him, but now they were willing to share their thoughts and concerns openly. He greeted them with warmth, listening to their stories and sharing his own experiences. It was a new beginning, one that fostered trust and connection. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the festival, General Williams gathered everyone for a closing ceremony. "Thank you all for being part of this special day," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. "Let's not let this moment be just a memory. Let's carry this spirit of community forward into our daily lives. Together, we can continue to make a difference." With that, the crowd erupted into applause once again, their hearts swelling with hope and determination. General Williams and Officer Smith exchanged proud smiles, knowing they had achieved something meaningful. As the festival came to an end, families began to pack up, exchanging hugs and goodbyes. General Williams felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing they had laid the groundwork for lasting change. Later that evening, as he walked through the now quiet park, General Williams reflected on how far they had come. The journey had been challenging, filled with moments of doubt and fear. But through vulnerability, honesty, and the willingness to connect, they had transformed their community. Officer Smith joined him, and together they stood at the edge of the park, watching the stars begin to twinkle in the night sky. "Today was incredible," he said, his voice filled with warmth. "I never imagined we could create such a positive impact." General Williams nodded, feeling the weight of their journey lift. "It's a testament to what happens when we open our hearts and minds. We can't change the past, but we can build a brighter future together." As they walked back toward their vehicles, General Williams felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had turned a painful past into a powerful movement for change. Their story was not just about confrontation and regret. It was about healing, hope, and the strength found in community. Together, they would continue to work towards a future where understanding and compassion reigned. It was a new dawn for their community, a future filled with promise, unity, and love.